I've got this model of this little gecko, this little lizard here, and I'm wanting to add some detail running down the back and the tail. But instead of modeling it in, I figured I could use a displacement map. But what I want to do is I want to control how much detail I put on the rest of the character. So if I come over to texture wire, what I want is I want a lot of detail down here, but keep this fairly light at render time. So what we can do is we can take advantage of Adaptive Pixel Subdivision, and so I thought we could take a look at doing that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move over to Weight Shade, and I'm going to create a new weight map. So we'll come over here to New, and I'm going to call this, let's call this Spine. And I'm not going to have an initial value, and I'm going to create it. Then I'm going to select the polys that run down the spine, say something like this. Come over to Map, Set Map Value, and I'm going to give it 100% value. Okay, so we've got 100% value down the spine and 0% value everywhere else. Okay. And the other thing I'm going to do, just so that I have even more control with Adaptive Pixel Subdivision, is right now there's the mesh is so light that there's not that many points that separate it. So I'm going to, and because this is a subdivisional surface, it's a subpatch object, what I'm going to do is I'm going to subdivide it so that it becomes denser. Now, it's a denser mesh, but all that means is that I can lower the sub D amount, like how much I want to subdivide it at render time up here. Instead of using like a default of 3, I might be able to get away with a 1 because it's so dense now. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that and shoot it over to layout. Okay, I'm just going to grab my camera, Shift C, T for move, and I'm just going to rotate. Actually, just so I don't have to mess much with the light, I'm going to just get a framing and then I'll rotate the character. That'll work. Okay, something like this. I'm going to grab the character and I want to be able to see that back, see the spine, so that we can really see what's going on. Okay. Now, in order to really see what's happening, I'm going to change the backdrop color. So Control F5 to bring up the Effects panel with the Backdrop tab active. And we'll just pick something that I know will work. This it's like school bus yellow. That'll work. Okay, and we'll do a render. Okay, so here's our character. Let's see the wireframe though. So I'm going to go over to Object, Properties, Edges. I'm going to select Other Edges, and I'm just going to pick white, just so that we can really see it. And this is what we're getting. This is at a subpatch level of 3, and the way we can check that is under the Geometry tab, we're saying, well, we're going to display it at 3, and we're going to render it at 3, and that's for the entire object. Okay, I personally don't think we need a subpatch of 3 for right now, so I'm going to change at render time. Let's just say 1 and see what that looks like. Okay, so there we go. So you can see that it's evenly 1 for every polygon, it's subdividing at a level of 1. But I want to have more geometry where I put that weight map, where the weight map value is higher. And I can do that by changing the render subpatch level from per object level. Let's change that to per polygon level. That means for every polygon, we can control what the subdivision level is. So I'm going to go to T for texture editor. Let's change the layer type to gradient. Let's change the input parameter to weight map, and let's use that spine weight map that we created. And now we need to tell it, well, what level do we want. So right here at -100, the value is at 1, and that works for me. And we'll say that at 0 it can be 1. So weight map value of 0, which was pretty much the whole character except for the spine. So a parameter of 100, that's that spine. Let's set that to 6 and see what that looks like. Okay, so we'll do a render. Okay, can you see that we've got a lot more geometry where that weight map value is, and then we only have a subpatch level of 1 here. But I can even fine tune that a little bit more. I'm just going to move this gradient. I'm going to move that key on the gradient. Okay. See, as I toggle, you can see it's less geometry here. And I can refine that. If I want more than 1 here, I can. But what I'm really going for is this really dense area on the back. There's no reason to have a lot of geometry where I don't need it. So I can control it with a weight map. There's a lot of other ways I can control it. The input parameter, we've got all different options here. But let's use the weight map here. So let's say we're happy with that. We got a lot of geometry to work with here, and we got enough here. But if we want, we can always change that from 1. Well, let's go ahead and do it while we're here. Let's change that from 1 to 2. Okay, and you can see it changes our gradient. And we'll do another render. See, now we got more geometry. You can see the shifting becomes a little less boxy. And again, we can just add as much as we want. So let's go ahead and start working with this. But first, I'm going to turn the edges off so that our render will not show the edges on those polys. Okay. And now I want to displace that area, but just the area down the spine. So we'll come over to Deform. We'll activate the Edit Nodes, and now let's go ahead and set this up. I'll slide this over so that we can talk about it if we need to. Okay, so first thing, let's go ahead and grab a few nodes. I'm going to grab the Spot Info node. This is going to allow us to use the normal, the polygon normals. I'm going to go over to Math, Vector, Scale. This will allow me to plug that normal in and feed the result into the input. And how do we want to displace this? Well, let's just grab a procedural texture and we'll try veins. Okay, some kind of little scaly thing going on here. And for the scale, I'm just going to try 0.1. We can always adjust this later. And I'm going to plug that procedural texture into the scale of the scale node, and then let's grab that weight map right here, and we're going to plug that into the opacity. So we're going to say the spine weight map values are going to control where the displacement's going to take place, and then I'm going to plug the result of all of this into the input of the parameter. Now we should be able to see, okay, wow, we've got a massive value. 100% value is really going to town on this. So I'm going to want to adjust that a little bit. Let's go over to Perspective, and I'm just going to slide this over to the side so we can kind of see in real time. Now, the thing to remember is that our display subdivision level is 3, so we are going to get a different result because we're using a much higher value at render time. But this will at least give us an idea. I mean, that's shooting it off pretty far. So what I'll do is I'll add a gradient, and I'm going to plug that into the input. Now, this is going to blow up back here because now I'm saying displace everything, because the weight map is what's actually controlling. Let's open this up just a little bit. The weight map is what's actually controlling where the displacement is taking place, and now without the weight map we're saying put it everywhere. Okay, so for the gradient, let's go ahead and say that for a 0 amount we'll go with 0, and then for 100%, which is 1, instead of white, let's go with a gray. Okay, which won't be 100%. It'll be a lot less than 100%. And then we're going to plug that into the opacity. Okay. Look, you can already see in OpenGL it's a lot less. But you know what? I want to even adjust that. I want to adjust that a little bit more. So I'm going to go on this color. I'm going to go a little darker, which is of course a lower value. You can see it lowering. Let's do it again just so you can see. I'm going to lower that, and then it shifts. Okay. So let's bring this guy over here, and let's do a render. Okay, So you can see that I'm displacing the geometry, but only where that weight map value is, where that weight map is with the high value. And I'm also taking advantage of all that extra geometry that's helping me get the detail in my displacement. But you know what? It's still really crazy. So I'm going to lower it even more. Lower value. Okay, kind of take a peek back here. That's looking much nicer in OpenGL. Let's see what it looks like here. Okay, so there you go. If you want to subdivide a mesh and have full control over where you're adding that geometry, well, you're going to want to take advantage of the APS system, the Adaptive Pixel Subdivision system. And then we can also use the same weight map to control. Let's just take one quick look. Okay, you can control using that same weight map, and this gradient is not needed. If I wanted to, I could have gone back to Modeler and lowered the weight map value from 100%. I could have made it, 20, 30%, but I figured why go back over to Modeler when I can just stick a gradient in between there and further refine the weight map value before I plug it in here. So this is the setup if you're wanting to control where you're displacing the geometry. So I'm using that weight map to control that. And then I'm going to go ahead and close this down, go over to Object Properties, and then for the amount of geometry that I want to create at render time, so the render subpatch level, I'm doing it on a per polygon level, and all I have to do is come over here and create a gradient using that weight map, and I can control how high the subdivision level is per polygon based on the weight map. So it's a quick way to have that kind of control over your subpatch objects.